order. Let's call the meeting of the regular meeting of the board meeting for the Comfort Lake Forest Lake Watershed District on March 9th, 6:30. I think we have a full quorum. All board managers are here. So the next item is setting the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda? Okay, I have one that I'd like to request. I'd like to add to the new business a very short topic. We've got the Forest Lake Association has their annual meeting coming up on May 17th, and Mike is going to be speaking at that along with McComas and some other people. And normally we get a small little blurb in the paper about that meeting, and it's not very effective. And we also have this year a DNR person going to be talking about loons on Forest Lake and habitat and so forth. So we think that'll be a big draw. So what we were thinking of doing is asking Angie, you know, Angie has a weekly article in there, so she's got access to that each week. Taking one of her days to write an article about the topics that are going to be discussed at the Lake Association meeting and inviting the public to come as well as just the members of the Lake Association. So Mike and I talked about that, and since we are using a resource that's partially paid for by the Watershed District, we thought we should bring this to the board and at least have a quick discussion on it and see how the board feels about that. The goal here would be to have, you know, she does a good job at opening up topics, and we want to talk about the alum treatment because that's something new. And we also want to talk about the issue with natural vegetation and the importance of having, even though that's going to expand, it's still important to have natural vegetation. So we wanted to get non-members to come, it's public in general, and then also to get other people interested in the lake to be more aware of what's going to be discussed at the meeting. So I believe we need a motion to do that, do we, Chuck?
Mr. Chair, are you proposing adding that as an agenda item, and where would you propose to put that?
I would put it in at the end of new business. And it'd be very short. I've already discussed it pretty much. We just have to vote on it or talk about it. So do we need a formal motion for that or not?
Well, you'll just have a motion to accept the agenda as amended.
Okay. So then we'll add that, and then we need a motion to accept the agenda as I amended it by adding that item as 5E. Is there a second to that motion?
I will second that.
Thank you, Doug. Bobby, can you please do a roll call vote on that?
Manager Baki, looks like we may have lost Manager Baki. Manager Lowe,
Aye.
Manager Taves,
Aye.
Manager Schmaltz,
Aye.
Manager Anderson.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Next topic is the consent agenda. We have two items this evening on the consent agenda. The minutes from the regular board meeting of January 12th and the regular board meeting minutes of January 26th. Are there any additions or corrections to those consent items?
Mr. President, the January 26th minutes did not get, they need to be finalized yet, so they're not considered for the approval.
Okay, so then we'll amend that just to include the minutes of January 12th.
I'll make the motion to accept the consent agenda.
Thank you, Manager Anderson. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Manager Taves, thank you. Bobby, please do a roll call vote.
Manager Baki, Manager Lowe,
Aye.
Manager Taves,
Aye.
Manager Schmaltz,
Aye.
Manager Anderson.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Bobby, if he's having trouble, he may try to decide to call in, so you may want to look for that coming in and let him in if he's calling to get into the meeting. Okay, next topic is the public hearing on Mooney Lake Capstone Project ordering.
Yes, Mr. President, managers, so this is a public hearing for the particular project or well projects. And so the memo outlines what is entailed. And so, Mr. President, if you would open the public hearing, and then we'll have a presentation by the district engineer, opportunity for comment, and then we'll close the public hearing. Later in the agenda, the board will act on approving the project to move forward with this. So,
Okay, I declare the public hearing open now.
okay,
Green light.
Mr. Yes, I think Kyle Crawford is going to
Oh, Kyle's gonna do it. Okay, good.
do the presentation here. Thank you, Kyle.
Okay, just making sure you can see the screens on your screen here, the PowerPoint. Perfect, thank you. Good evening, board managers. I'll be doing a quick presentation on the Moody Lake Capstone project. This is the completion of the feasibility portion of this project. So just a quick introduction. I'm the lead engineer and project manager. Also involved with Blaine as our project coordinator, Chris Long, working on wetland restoration design support, and Trevor Rendhog on modeling and pollutant removal. Cecilio, who is also on this call, was also heavily involved due to some bit more complicated pollutant removal modeling for this project. So for this project, we looked at 5 different locations for potential projects. You can see on the map on the left, they were the field gully repair on the north end, the Lofton Avenue ditch checks, the round barn soil excavation, the Moody Park improvements, and the South Moody wetland dredging. As part of the feasibility, we did end up removing the Lofton Avenue ditch check project. It ended up just not being cost effective, and for the small amount of removals, we just determined it was not just not cost effective and in the interest of the watershed. So for a little bit of perspective here, the road running north-south is Lofton Avenue. So you can see all 4 projects are on the east side of Lofton Avenue. They are all 2 of the projects are on private land, and we are currently working on the easements with that. And then the Round Barn and Moody Park improvement projects are both within the township property. So for this project, the district was awarded a Clean Water Fund grant in the amount of $215,000. That does have a required match of $53,750. That grant is active through the end of 2024. And we are currently looking at about a 62-pound annual reduction in phosphorus. So the first project, the field gully repair, district staff and EOR identified 3 areas within an agricultural cornfield that were actively eroding, with gullies continually getting larger. And then as part of that, we also identified on the south end here a sediment plume that was building from that erosion from the south gully there. So as part of this project, we're proposing to stabilize all 3 of them and install ditch checks to slow down the water and allow strong native perennial cover to establish in these. One thing to note, you can see with the parcel boundaries there, we are impacting 3 different parcels. So there are 3 separate private parcels. Blaine with the watershed is currently coordinating with all the landowners, but those easements have not yet been finalized. The next one is the Round Barn excavation. So this is within the Round Barn Park owned by the township. You can see to the left of the proposed project areas, we have the round barn and then the rectangular barn to the north. So as part of soil testing, we discovered there's a very high legacy load within those existing soils, due likely to historic manure stockpiling, essentially getting thrown out of the barns on the east side there. So with these, we're proposing to excavate approximately 2 feet deep within those 2 dashed areas to remove a large amount of that legacy phosphorus loading, and then those areas would be restabilized and seeded with native vegetation. So this is all on one public parcel owned by the township, and we do have an approved property use agreement with the township for this project. Third project is the Moody Park Rain Garden. So this is just south of the Brown Barn Park. This is actually the parking lot for that. Here we're proposing to install 2 narrow rain gardens on the east side of the parking lot. And those rain gardens would pick up flows from the parking lot. So currently the flows from the parking lot go down in kind of eroded sandy walkway that is currently spilling out directly into Moody Lake. So with this project, we'd be proposing a disconnection of that, routing the waters directly into the rain gardens. And then we'd be proposing to provide permanent stabilization of that pathway down to the lake to prevent that sediment from washing directly into Moody Lake. As with the previous project, this is on the same parcel. So we do have that property use agreement that has been approved by the township board. So then our fourth and final project is the South Moody Wetland Dredging Project. Type 1 dredging. Again, this is another high historic legacy load of phosphorus from the barn on the edge of the wetland there. Likely historic loading from manure and other farming practices getting directly into that wetland. So we are proposing to excavate approximately 0.3 acres from that wetland of historic legacy load that has been determined by soil testing within there. And then there is a disposal area on the west side of the road, which will greatly diminish the cost of hauling materials away. This does have, both the parcels are owned by one landowner. This easement is also not quite finalized yet. So for the 4 total projects, we have a cost range of approximately $238,000 to $276,000. All told, the cost effectiveness for the life cycle is estimated to be approximately 214 pounds of total phosphorus. $214 per pound of total phosphorus. I will note that all these costs are conservative. They do include a 20% contingency and have some additional built-in contingencies just for the level of detail, being we are only at feasibility level. So then water quality benefits, as I mentioned earlier, the annual total phosphorus reduction from the projects is estimated to be 62 pounds. Of that, approximately 4.5 come from the filled gully repair. The round soil barn has 2 to 18. Moody Park improvements does have about 0.5 pound, with a large amount coming out of the South Moody wetland dredging area. So that's a range of 56 to 72. In addition, the field gully repair and the Moody Park improvements are expected to produce a small total suspended solid removal as well. So there are some additional benefits we have identified as part of these projects. All of them will be restored with native vegetation, in addition to the inherent habitat improvements. And then you may notice the Moody Park Rain Garden did have smaller removals than the other ones. However, we do want to note that there is a strong potential educational component, as well as heavy metal removals that would occur within these rain gardens that are not typically quantified as part of that phosphorus cost benefit. Schedule, so assuming the board does vote to move forward tonight, we would be moving into final design and stormwater modeling immediately, as well as permit applications and approvals. With the permitting, there is a fairly long lead time, so we would likely be kicking those off quite soon and working on design concurrently. We would anticipate bringing these back to the board for review and approval to let bids in July, with expectation that we'd be bidding out this project between July and August. And then we would return to the board in mid-August for review and potentially awarding the contract to a contractor. And then we'd have an estimated construction window of fall this year through potentially summer of next year. The wetland dredging projects will likely occur in the winter. However, some of the other projects will need to be warm weather, so they would likely be either late fall or in spring 2024. So with that, I can open up if there's any questions from the board.
It's a public hearing. Are there anybody in the audience that has questions on this project or would like to speak? Okay, hearing none, then I'm going to close the public section. And we'll be voting on this later in the meeting, as Mike mentioned. So thank you, Kyle. We'll talk to you later at the meeting. Before moving on to new business, I noticed we have a guest in our audience. Leif Erickson is with us. Leif is newly elected to the city council for a 2-year term, and he is, I think, been appointed the representative to the Lake Association. He's replacing Ms. Valento, who you may recall was attending our meetings the last couple of years. So Eric, Leif, I just want to say hello to you and welcome you to the board. Thanks for coming. We look forward to having you attend our meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I apologize. My camera on my laptop does not work. So when I'm not at my office with my external camera, I can't be present in person, but I definitely am here. So thank you for the good work you're doing. And I appreciate the opportunity to be a part of sitting in on this.
Welcome aboard. Thanks. Okay, moving on to new business. First topic is 2023 AIS Prevention and Management Plan. And the action step here is to approve that plan tonight. Mike, do you want to introduce this or someone else?
Yes, Mr. President and managers, some of you will know that Mr. Miller and his wife were expecting, and they went into the hospital this morning. I haven't heard anything further, but he's not available this evening to answer any questions. But we have gone through this. You know, it's off of past budgets, observations, experiences from last year, as well as input from a number of our partners, or many partners. And so if there's any specific questions, I guess fire away. I'll see how many I can answer, or else we can research and get back to the board.
I have a couple of questions.
Manager Anderson, go ahead.
Thank you. First, on the first page, AIS budget summary, there is a $500 contribution from the Comfort Lakes Association for the monitoring program, not monitoring, the boat launch checks. So I wanted to make note of that. That check was sent out, I think, a week and a half ago, so you should get that. I didn't see that listed.
Oh yeah, this is a 2022 year end. That's why it's
Okay.
It'll show up in the 2023. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, I thought this was for this coming year, 23. All right. Anyway, you've got note of that. On the Moody Lake second page, it explains. I'd like a little bit. It's actually the first page, the cover page, but a little bit of detail on this native aquatic plant transplanting project. I've not heard of that, and Moody is a natural environment lake. So is that possible? I would think that they would have plenty of plant coverage, but obviously not.
They, they do, but it's principally just 2 species. And it seems that it would have the capacity for more diversity. However, we previously had a lot of curly leaf pondweed on that lake. And we had to address enough of the external load before DNR would issue permits for the district to treat that. So we've arrived at that several years ago. We've been completing the treatments, and we've successfully have set back the curly leaf pondweed. And with the improved water quality, we really have been seeing a large amount of native vegetation, but it's not very diverse. And so we have been communicating with the DNR and other resource professionals about some different methodologies for this. And I've been sitting in on the meetings, and what my intention is to make sure that we're doing some replicated survey work, so we can establish if a couple different practices to see if we're getting any to take hold. This would be a good lake because there are no boats on. Well, I take that back. There's a couple of boats on Moody Lake, but it's not high traffic enough to be a factor. So then we could see if this practice or this approach will be successful, and then we could look to replicate it in other areas, but also work with researchers to advance some of the techniques, because there's several out there that people have attempted with differing success.
Mhm. Well, I think that's very exciting. I hadn't heard about this before, but if this is the start of something new for the district, I'm all for this. I just like to hear a little bit more about it, but
Sure.
that's really good. On the Bone Lake AIS budget summary, it's actually on the narrative.
Okay.
The point I wanted to bring out here is in the increase for both Bone Lake and Comfort Lake. We've been down in that $4,000 or $5,000 range for a long time. And so I'm very encouraged that the district is upping those budgets to around 14,000, 15,000 for Bone and Comfort. It's pretty difficult to do sometimes what needs to be done when you're fighting, especially invasive species. So I'm really happy to see that. I think this last year and a half of discussions on our AIS program has really, I think, made people take a second look at that. So kudos to staff. That's an encouragement. If you look at the chart, the Bone Lake water quality goals and measured averages, every one of our reports has this.
Mhm.
What I thought was not real clear for people is where we started. You have that long-term trend box in the brown, the very last column.
Mhm.
And so it says significantly improving. Now this says negative 50% since 2012. So obviously what that means is that it's gone down by 50%. That might be a little bit confusing to people that aren't used to following those kinds of trend lines. So I thought it might be helpful if we could squeeze in that starting point column over on the far left. And that way it'd be very clear to people what we're dealing with. But that's just a suggestion. And obviously when you have time to look at it, it would be helpful, I think. On the Little Comfort Lake narrative, I have heard that we've had trouble, getting access to Little Comfort, and it's tough to always get in there to do the monitoring because they have to come in along Highway 8, which is pretty dangerous, or walk long distances when they park on Heath. So I just have a question about the the access for Little Comfort, do we think that's going to be improved at some point in the future so that we don't have these inhibitions to doing more of that contact work with the lake? And you don't have to answer that tonight. That's just a question I'd like to have answered at some point in the future. Then if you look at the budget summary chart on Little Comfort, I think the wrong word has been used here in the chart, the long-term trend on the mean summer Secchi depth. It says that it's been declining since 2012. The number has been, I thought was holding, pretty steady and going up, but is that accurate that we're actually losing clarity in Little Comfort?
Why don't we check that after the meeting so we can keep on schedule here if possible? We can check that afterwards. This may be a typo or.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So if we can have that looked at before it's finalized, that would be great.
Mm.
And the same thing is true on the Lake Keewatin. It has for the mean summer Secchi depth reading as being declining, and that should be showing an improvement. So again, if you'll just check that out, it might just have been an oversight. Forest Lake, on the AIS budget summary page, the same thing for that middle range is the mean summer phosphorus reading. I mean, the mean summer phosphorus concentration. It says it's been declining since 2012. So just let's make sure those last two boxes say declining when it should be, phosphorus should be improving.
Well, I do think on Keewatin though, there's a lot of construction on the highway. There's been some changes in the management along the shoreline. It had really exceptional, it was, one of the top, I think 2 or 3 lakes in the entire metro.
Right.
For the longest time. And so that 12.9, I think would in fact, if that's accurate, that would be declining. So I will verify that and get back to the board about it. We'll have the monitoring report at the next board meeting.
Yeah, I don't remember that kind of a decline though. That's what I'm saying is that maybe it's accurate, but let's just double check to make sure. And then on Forest Lake, again, the mean summer phosphorus concentration shows a declining trend and not an improving trend. So we want to double check that.
Well, the concentration is going to decline because if it's 40 is where the threshold is, and if it goes down, that's good.
Yeah.
So the concentration is declining. It's getting lower. Secchi disc is the reverse. Secchi disc, if it's going down, that means it's getting cloudier rather than clear. So it's a little confusing because they're opposites to each other.
Well, it is, and I thought we were always showing those as on the trend line as improving or not improving. So let's just clarify what that means in that box and
Maybe we use the word improving or something like that instead.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Anything else, Manager Anderson?
Yeah, just one thing on Comfort Lake. In the second Eurasian milfoil, there will be a spring delineation to monitor the success of the program last year, the treatment program last year. And I didn't see that, so we should make note of that. That was it.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, then I'm going to make the motion that we move to approve the 2023 AIS Prevention and Management Plan. Can someone second that motion?
I'll second.
Thank you, Manager Anderson. Bobby, can you do a roll call vote?
Manager Small, Manager Baki,
Yeah, Manager Baki, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to let you know that my Zoom connection was not stable, so I have phoned in and I'm able to participate now. Thank you.
Great. I'm glad you were flexible to adapt there. So good to have you on board. Thank you.
Manager Baki,
Aye.
Manager Loth,
Aye.
Manager Taves,
aye,
Manager Schmaltz,
Aye.
Manager Anderson.
Aye.
Good. Management plan has been approved. Thank you. Item B then is the 2023 Comfort Lake Forest Lake Water District and Chisago County WCI Joint Powers Agreement for our inspection program. And the action step here is to approve the motion to accept this joint powers agreement. So would somebody like make that motion before we get into discussion?
I'll make that motion.
Can you read it, Manager Anderson, so we have it for the record?
Actually, I can't. Oh, here we go. Yeah,
Right.
I can now. I move to approve the joint powers agreement between Chisago County and the Comfort Lake Forest Lake Watershed District for cost sharing of the boat launch inspection program.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I will second that motion, Manager Baki.
Thank you, Manager Baki. Okay, we'll open it up for discussion then, or for any other description that, well, Garrett's not here, so are you going to cover that, Mike?
Yes, I was just gonna, just quickly, so this is an agreement, joint powers agreement that we've had with, just the district has had with Chisago County every year since 2007. So one of the perhaps longer or longest joint powers agreement between watershed district and watershed entity regarding AIS related work. So so really pleased that we can continue to partner with Chisago County and collaborate on this, and so it's, the agreement itself is consistent with the one that was approved last year and years prior. So unless there's any particular questions about the graph that Garrett put together there, I guess we're ready for approval.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Are there any comments or questions? If not,
Manager
then,
Baki.
Manager Baki, go
Manager
ahead.
Schmaltz. Yeah, just an observation. I noticed that that the Washington County AIS prevention contribution for Bone Lake is $1,000, and that for Forest Lake it's about $14,354, and that the Chisago County AIS prevention contributes $5,000 to Comfort Lake. I just am curious to know. It seems it's disproportionate in the amounts that are provided, and it's just an observation at this point.
It is, so we've just completed agreements for 2023. But I've just received them today from Washington County. And so this is, we have to make an application, but they also have a framework in which what they're willing and who they're willing to provide funds to. Most of that money goes to the WCD to do their watercraft inspection programs and other things. But since we were, farther ahead, and we actually trained the WCD on how to do watercraft inspections and all AIS, we gave them the framework for our entire AIS program. With that being said, the county itself has set the framework for the grants and limits how much it would go to each water body. So it has to do with number of parking stalls and a variety of other metrics. And so that's presently that's how it's framed. But we feel this has been pretty consistent with what we've seen in the past, and still pretty happy that we're still included, because there was one point where they were looking to try to early on lock us out. But I think Manager Schmaltz and I went down and talked to administration and convinced them that our program was far more efficient than what others were doing, and they've retained funding in the current format. But we can go over that more detail, Mr. Baki, in the future.
Yeah, Dave,
Well, thank
basically.
you.
it's
That helps. That helps clarify it a bit more. I knew there had to be some kind of a metric involved. I just wasn't clear as to what it was. So thank you.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's traffic level, size of lake, the number of launches you have. We have 3, for example, on Forest Lake, and the traffic levels are higher and so forth. So that's how they've tried to spread it out that way based upon the amount of inspections required. So, okay, good question. Thank you. Any other questions?
Just clarifying, when did you have to talk with the county about keeping the program? Was
About
it
5
recent?
years ago.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah. At least-
Actually, the Lake Association was very active in that meeting also, our Lake Association. So we had a lot of people there. So anyway, it was up in the air back then. They were thinking of, so it worked out fine and we're in good shape now.
Yeah,
So,
good.
okay, I think we have a motion and a second. Any other questions? If not, we can do the roll call vote. Bobby?
Manager Baki,
Aye.
Manager Loth,
Aye.
Manager Taves,
Aye.
Manager Schmaltz,
Aye.
Manager Anderson.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Next topic is the Moody Lake Capstone Project scope of work, and we have 2 action steps here. The first is a motion to adopt the resolution 230301, and the second is a motion to authorize the administrator not to exceed a certain amount of dollars. So do we have any other discussion required for this, Mike, or can we move to a vote?
I think we
I
can
ha-
move to
I have a
vote, but
question.
I have a few more comments, but we can make the motion first.
So why don't we do that? Make both motions would be great.
I have a question first, though, on the numbering of the resolution. The recommended advice says 23-03-01, but the document has an A after it. It's 01A. So what's correct?
There's actually 2, the resolutions have been bifurcated. There's 2 resolutions.
Yeah, one's
Yep.
2303-01B. So I'm just asking, should we be using those modifiers?
Yes, please.
Okay. I will
So
make
the-
the motion. I
Go
will
ahead,
make the,
Manager Anderson. Yeah.
okay. I'll make the motion to adopt resolution 23-03-01A. And that is the ordering of the South Moody Wetland dredging element of the Moody Lake Capstone Project.
Is there a second to that? I'll second that motion. And then we need a second motion for authorizing the project work.
We'll actually have 2 resolutions, Mr. President. So
We have a 1B too, don't we? That's right. I forgot about that. So I'll move to adopt resolution 230301B.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
you should discuss and dispense with the present motion first.
okay, thank you, council. So is there any discussion or questions on that first resolution?
Mr. President, managers, I'll just note that, during the presentation, during the hearing portion, you are laid out some of the costs, the estimated life cycle costs. And, one of the things that, we have really tried to work on is these legacy loads that last much longer beyond the life cycle of the grant. These projects where we're physically removing them, that will be permanent removals far beyond all of our lifetimes. So from that standpoint, the cost benefit is even better than what we have put on there. So I just want to kind of make that statement, because a lot of these activities, there really will be no maintenance required, and we'll be seeing the benefit for many generations to come.
I think that's an important point. I'm glad you brought that up, because a lot of our work is designed that way. And I think people, you know, people don't know that unless we tell them every time. And so there's very little maintenance ongoing for something that you are trying to bring back to its natural state. So thanks for bringing that up.
Okay,
President
thank you.
Schmaltz,
Yes,
just a note that I will not participate in the discussion or the voting on these items because one of these elements of this project is on my property to remediate some things that happened about a century ago. So I don't receive benefit from it, but I just want to make sure there's no appearance of impropriety.
okay, thank you, Manager Taves. We understand. Thank you.
And Mr. Chair,
Yes,
just clarify for the manager's benefit and also Manager Taves. The present motion is for the present resolution that would be to order the element that is on your property. The subsequent resolution, which is 01B, is for the remainder of the projects. So you certainly have the ability to participate in the subsequent discussion and vote on resolution B if you choose.
Just a point of clarification, though. I thought I read in the study, the feasibility study, that there is a benefit to the district for Manager Taves to have volunteered his property because it saves in the cost of trucking all of that removal off-site. And so there is a actual gain to the district as far as costs for the project. And the declaration of this being a situation where he had to recuse himself from a vote, I didn't see that was the determination that he could vote on this. It was minor. So.
well, I
it's a
think
good-
Manager Anderson, our council, had just pointed out the situation to us and without,
Yeah,
well, actually, I think our council recommended that it was minor and that
Mhm.
Manager Taves probably had a choice of which way he wanted to go.
okay.
Is that correct,
I-
Chuck? I think if I
That-
remember reading your memo on that.
That's correct.
Okay,
I just wanted to make it clear.
okay,
Yeah.
thank you. So any other questions on the motion for 1A? If not, then we can do a roll call vote on that part of the project. Bobby, if you would do the roll call vote.
Manager Baki,
Aye.
Manager Loaf,
Aye.
Manager Taves,
Abstain.
Manager Schmaltz,
Aye.
Manager Anderson.
Okay, motion carries. Okay, so now the second one, I'll make the motion to adopt resolution 230301B. Is there a second to that?
I'll second.
Thank you, Manager Anderson. Any discussion or questions? Hearing none, then, Bobby, can you do a roll call vote?
Manager Baki,
Aye.
Manager Loaf,
Aye.
Manager Taves,
Aye.
Manager Schmaltz,
Aye.
Manager Anderson.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Now we've got another motion. If somebody would read motion number 2, so we can get that into the record.
Yeah, I will make the motion for number 2. Moving to authorize the administrator on advice of council to enter into an agreement with EOR in accordance with the March 2nd scope of work, tasks 2 and 3, and in an amount not to exceed $36,152.
Thank you, Manager Anderson. Is there a second to that?
I'll second that.
I will.
Thank you, Chris. Discussion or questions? Or comments? Okay, hearing none then, Bobby, can we do a roll call vote?
Manager Baki,
Aye.
Manager Loth,
Aye.
Manager Taves,
Aye.
Manager Schmaltz,
Aye.
Manager Anderson.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Moving on then to the next topic, which would be the item D, which would be Little Comfort Infiltration Basin Feasibility Scope of Work. And for this one, we have one motion. And I'd like to get that on the floor before we open discussion on that. So if someone could read that on the second page. Anybody have?
All right, I will move to authorize the administrator on advice of council to enter into an agreement with EOR in accordance with the February 16th scope of work, task 1, in an amount not to exceed $31,295.
Okay, thank you, Manager Anderson. Do we have a second?
I will second that.
Thank you, Manager Taves. Okay, Mike, do you want to introduce
Yes,
this?
Mr. President, managers. So we have both Emily and Blaine are in the meeting here too. If you have any questions for them, but Emily's kind of laid out some of the pieces, but really, as a memo notes, this is really a lesson or a case study of adaptive management. So we came into this project area, first looking at a couple of very different types of projects, and just through more data and modeling analysis, which of course are cornerstone to good, effective projects that have a good return on investment. And we know that we are really alone in this kind of work in terms of the utilization of data to guide good decision making and economic, the Pareto principle. So these other projects really were not able to come to fruition. Some because of DNR, the Little Comfort, the alum treatment itself was that the data just showed it really didn't need a treatment. And then this drainage area, it just, once we got into further modeling, there were so many properties that were going to be where we were going to need agreements, and we did enough outreach to ascertain that that was not a likely possibility. And so we looked at some other potential options, and we discussed with the board this property, the former gravel pit. And so this is really what this is about now, is just bringing back to the board more fully the scope of work to move this project to its next phase. So the engineers here as well, Mr. Crawford, as well as Cecilio, if there's any questions of them.
Okay, any questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, then I think we can just move to a vote. Bobby, you want to do the roll call vote?
Manager Baki,
Aye.
Manager Loth,
Aye.
Manager Taves,
Aye.
Manager Schmaltz,
Aye.
Manager Anderson.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. So next item, 5E, a residential cost share program framework. And this is the first time we've seen this proposal. It's still work in progress, but we wanted to get it before the board just so you have some exposure to it early on. And Mike is going to make some comments on this before we start. And I'm going to suggest we have about 20 minutes for this. And this is a fairly large and fairly complex program that was being new. So I'm suggesting that we stick to our 20 minutes. And then after Mike makes his comments and so forth, and we go through this, that we each at least have one question we can bring up. And if we have more time, we'll do more questions. Otherwise, then I think we should probably move on and then have everybody maybe submit some questions or comments to the staff after you've had a chance to look at this at home and so forth. So that's what I'm recommending right now. But Mike, why don't you go ahead with your comments and introduction?
Sure. Mr. President, managers, also at the meeting is Aiden Reed. He's a staff person that was really spearheading a lot of the work behind this, and I think he's got a few slides and things too to kind of maybe go over to show some of the work that was involved. Is that we've been talking about this for some while. Well, it turned out that last summer, as we started into basically weekly meetings to work on developing this along and evaluating programs from around the state and the Midwest, even beyond Minnesota, for consideration. We also had then intersected with the Jeff Forrester from the Minnesota Lakes and Rivers Association, as well as the DNR. They have a work group on lakeshore restoration related activities. Turned out that DNR has been looking at this, and there's I just saw an email today citing the really alarming amount of lakeshore that's been altered in smaller to medium-sized lakes around the state, not just the metro, but around the state. And so this is kind of really a canary in the coal mine kind of piece when it comes to lake ecology. And so this is kind of a next major area of work for I think for the district and many others in terms of hopefully changing the way that property owners of lake shores interact with this resource, and that they can learn to appreciate and live with certain elements of what nature was there prior to them putting a structure on it. So somehow living more in balance, if you will. So that being said, we know that everybody comes from a different perspective. And we've also have known for some time that when a property turns over, and in the district where we average about 50 to 60 lakeshore properties a year that have new ownership. And normally within the first 2 years, those properties undertake a lot of work, sort of this nesting, if you will, to make the property their own. And it often includes then for lakeshore residents, the notion that they have to clean up the lakeshore. So we're really trying to work across a broad spectrum of individuals to do outreach, much more than we have in our current program format. So Aiden, are you ready to give a little bit of background here as well?
I am ready.
Okay, take it away. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, managers. I'm going to share a few slides that we prepared in preparation for this. You're able to see a presentation slide labeled Residential Cost Share Program Revision. Perfect. So thank you for that introduction, Mike. As Mike noted, this has been quite an effort for myself and a number of our staff. And I'm going, in the interest of our time, this is basically a distillation of that long policy document that you've been provided. And so that policy document is basically the under the hood workings of our vision for the residential cost share program. And so the rest of the team, including Jess Hell and our outreach staff, are working on kind of, we're kind of waiting to hear from the board what you think of this. And then we're going to proceed in putting this very heavy policy document into a more approachable format, obviously, for residents. So with that in mind, this is part of our comprehensive shoreline program. So this is not our comprehensive shoreline program. This is one element of our shoreline program. And so the other elements of this are being worked on by other staff, including myself. And that's kind of this array of resources that we'll be offering with a real focus on addressing our ambitious 10-year watershed management plan goals specific to shoreline. In writing this residential policy program revision, this is more of a general document with a very precise, it's a more general document, but there's a significant concentration on shoreline. So, you know, somebody pursuing a rain garden would be referencing the same programs as somebody referring to a shoreline restoration program. However, there's some elements that was built in specific to shoreline restoration as well. So, as Mike kind of prefaced, this really began last summer where I had kind of begun administering the residential programs that we had, including primarily our plant grant. And then we're also looking ahead to the future in how we're going to meet our shoreline restoration goals. And also we had the opportunity to apply for the Minnesota Green Corps program, which we were successful in, and having Jess Hall join our staff. So in preparation for that, we knew that we would have to refocus some of our tools and efforts into this program. And so that all kind of happened in the spring and in the summer, and you know, has involved kind of a longer process. And our starting point was the plant grant. So for the last several years, we've been providing the plant grant, which, you know, as you know, is our $500 reimbursement grant for plant materials. It's a very popular program. Several other watershed districts have a similar program. And then in addition to that formal program, we also offer just broadly what we refer to as technical assistance. That's what we provide, or that's what is provided with our partnership with the SWCD and Washington Conservation District. We're providing plans, you know, advice on invasive species removal, you know, this more general technical assistance. So briefly, in 2022, we had 25 requests for site visits. Now, staff were out on site, various sites, more than 25 times, but we had 25 initial inquiries. 18 of those were regarding projects. 3 were just very specifically just looking for some information. Those 25 requests did not all result in a site visit. Some folks, you know, we weren't able to get a hold of again, but 7 plant grant applications, which is an uptake of 38%. I'll note that that's quite high. It's unusual to see, you know, more than 20%. So in our small data set here, we do have quite a bit of uptake for that plant grant. However, one of those applications is for shoreline, was for a shoreline project. And even that was a little fuzzy. It's an excavated pond that was grandfathered in, you know, from decades and decades ago in what is a wetland area. So it's a somewhat broad definition of shoreline. So what that tells us is this plant grant program really is not well suited to pushing along our shoreline restoration goals. Not to say there aren't other resources out there to push the needle on those goals, but the plant grant itself wasn't really doing much for that. So with that in mind, we began a period of staff review, basically looking at our programs, such as the data you just saw, and thinking about what else we could do. We looked at other examples that are being used around the state and another, you know, broadly in the Midwest, and then began formulating what we thought would be, you know, our dream program. The CAC has been a really important part of this. They've done a fantastic job, and they've expressed continuing interest in it. And so we had a dedicated CAC workshop, as well as, you know, monthly updates on this project throughout. They reviewed this document that you're looking at, I believe in early January. So they've really been integral in kind of helping us workshop some ideas, as well as providing a lot of their own ideas. And that brings us to where we're at now, is its policy draft. So like I said, this is the under the hood workings of a program we would like to launch this spring. We're bringing it to you to solicit your comments, your thoughts. You know, this is the document you're looking at is something that we were comfortable bringing to you, not in a finished state, but pretty close to a finished state. And so what we're hoping to launch, this is our more or less our dream ask, having gone through all the workshopping process. 2 new grants, 1 additional incentive program, and then just some changes to our technical assistance. So our our plant grant will be replaced by a mini grant, which removes the specific requirement for plant materials and makes it more broad. What this comes from is, you know, there's a number of times I've been out on a site, and if you're really looking at a water quality issue, it's uncommon that $500 of plant materials is the most cost-effective way of addressing that. there's been a number of sites I've been at where really some downspout diverters or even a rain barrel would have been a very significant investment in water quality. Now, it's not to say that, you know, I love native plants as much as the next guy, if not more, but we wanted to kind of broaden the pool of resources we're able to offer and the projects that could be implemented. The community water cost share, if you look through that program, that's going to resemble very much what I just referred to as a traditional cost share program. More or less, most watersheds are going to have something like this out there. The funding amounts are going to differ. What we are pitching is a base level 50% cost share with a max funding amount of $5,000. This would be a very significant investment for folks who are looking at some more serious shoreline restorations. We've also assembled a ranking criteria. Anytime we're giving out money like this, we want to make sure that we have, you know, as little subjective value as possible going into the analysis of a decision like this. So we've created 2 tiers, a 50% ranking tier, and then a ranking tier up to 75%, capped at $7,500. And that's somewhat in line with what we see around our area. A little more innovatively, we have our Watershed Legacy Payments Program. So this is something that has, there's some examples of this in the agricultural world and in the forestry world. I have not encountered anything like this in the residential world. Basically what this is us providing payments to landowners who meet certain criteria that are contingent on land management that's beneficial for the watershed. Whether that's lakeshore owners with a sizable buffer, certain canopy restrictions, you know, certain amount of canopy cover, restrictions on how much storm or impervious surface can be on the site. All of those things contribute to our account for this Watershed Legacy Payments Program. So this is a brand new program that I'm particularly excited about and has had the most kinks to work out as we've gone through it. Technical assistance, generally what it's been, it's just a little more formalized. And we are also proposing to offer soil testing, which is a new thing for us that we're hoping is a really effective outreach tool and a really cost-effective method for addressing some more broad land management concerns. So quick little run through here of your eligibility for a cost share program to hopefully simplify it a little bit. So projects must improve water quality. If $500 is the funding amount you're looking for, you're eligible for the mini grant. That would be the best option for you. If you're looking for more than $500, that's where we begin to look into that community cost share, or that community water cost share, which is a competitive ranked grant. If your grant meets that 50% ranking criteria, then you receive up to 50% with a max of $5,000. The way we wrote this language gives us wiggle room. You know, if the recommendation by staff to the board and then the board decision is under 50%, we want to have that wiggle room for various reasons. And then that higher tier of ranking would allow you to achieve 75% up to 7,500. Those are going to be really significant projects that have either a profound water quality impact, or, you know, there's going to be something else going on there that's causing that project to be ranked very highly. And then this legacy payment program is also somewhat confusing. So I've tried to simplify it similarly. Must be a residential landowner. And this next part was inspired by the CAC and has really been kind of a tricky element to work around. We want to be able to provide some funding for maintenance in the first couple of years of projects. That has been the consensus as we've workshopped this. So the way we've done this is if you receive that community cost share grant, you are automatically eligible to be receiving a portion of these payments. You're automatically in this payment program, but only for 3 years. So whatever amount is set for that payment program, you receive 100% your first year, 2/3 the second year, 1/3 the third year, and nothing the fourth year. The hope with this is that as these folks are receiving that payment, they get used to it and they like it, and they're using that to maintain their practices. And so following that eligibility period, they then reapply for the program in general. And that program is going to have ranking criteria, which we've laid out in the policy document. And again, it's a tiered system. So if you meet that higher tier, you receive 100% of the payment. If you meet that lower tier, you receive 50%. And if you don't really meet any of those criteria, you're not eligible. But our effort as staff is that this is an engagement process, that we can take somebody who's interested and basically write them a list of recommendations and kind of shuttle them into this program that hopefully they've heard about from their friends, their neighbors. This idea that, oh, my neighbor's getting this payment, but I'm not. What can I do to get to qualify for that? And then, as I noted, those folks with just that 3-year eligibility, they can reapply for the full program at really any time. And then property owners must maintain their property to the standard that is set by these criteria. And we'll likely be, sending out annual mailings and have an element of self-reporting for folks who have entered this program, followed by inspections at a certain interval of years, whether that's 3 years or 5 years or whatnot. So, like I said, we kind of saw some of these programs out in the wild. The mini grant is being used by a number of folks. Community water cost share is used, by most watershed districts at this point. We put our own little twist on them in some ways. And then that watershed legacy payments, I would say that's original to us as far as it applies to residential properties, but used very successfully in Wisconsin. A couple examples: our Minnesota Ag Water Quality Certification is similar, that it has ranking criteria and then kind of a reward, a big carrot on the end of the stick for folks that can meet this criteria. And then even more broadly, the Sustainable Forest Incentive Act does something very similar by providing tax credits to folks. And so that was my quick overview. I'm happy to go back to any of these slides, and I'll leave the presentation up for the moment, and I can kind of answer questions in the time that we have remaining, which I believe is not much.
Okay, are there any questions or comments?
President Schmaltz.
Manager Schmaltz.
Yes. Is that Manager Loth? Go ahead.
You can go ahead, Dave Baki.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Manager Schmaltz, at the January Bone Lake Association meeting, Aiden and Garrett, and I believe Jess Hall were at the meeting talking about shoreline restoration grants. There was a tremendous amount of interest from members of the Bone Lake Association in getting other folks around the lake educated about the program. The plant grant program has really diminished as far as interest has gone. We had a few takers of that over the years. I think right now we are generating more interest, especially for those who are traditionally just cutting their grass right down to the lakeshore, and talking with those people and offering them some solutions. And so I'm very excited about the possibilities here and the interest that it's generating. Thanks.
Good. Thank you, Manager Baki. Any other comments or questions?
I just had a quick one, President Schmaltz.
Go ahead, Manager Loth.
For the legacy program, is there any dollar amounts that we're looking at paying out? I know that wasn't included, so I just didn't know if that was something that was still in process or.
So I can answer that. Thank you, Manager Loth. The document that we provided has the amount will be set by the board. And so our recommended amount in 2023 is $300. I will say that this whole document we could treat more or less as a pilot program for this year. And what works, and adaptive management will reassess, and if something is very successful, we can go look at other funding sources. The amount we recommended in 2023 is $300. So folks meeting that highest tier are receiving 100% of that payment, which is $300. Folks meeting the lesser criteria would be receiving 50% of that payment. And that's our recommendation.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or suggestions?
I have a question and a comment.
Manager Anderson, go ahead.
Well, first I'm going to start off with the comments, which pretty much echo what Manager Bach has said. This has been a long time coming. It's very professional. I know it's just the first draft, but it looks pretty good. And congratulations to the team who worked on this. It's going to be very exciting to put this into the district and see the response. Our program that we've had in the past, as I've said several times, just wasn't exciting people. It just wasn't being used. And so this has tremendous possibility. But this is discussion only, and I know we're going to have more time to talk about this in the near future. Give us time to really dive into this a little bit better and come back with some comments, meaningful comments. But I do have one question on page 12. It talks about a property tax payment program. Now, Mike has talked to us about a similar program in Wisconsin, and I'm wondering if that's what you're talking about. This would be something that we would have to work on legislatively. But if people restore their shore or maintain a natural shoreline, they would be eligible for a tax credit. So is that what you have in mind here?
Yes, Manager
Okay.
Anderson. We would not, we've contacted the counties
Mhm.
In the past, and then I think Aiden has done so even today with Saco County. We can just, I mean, and if Manager Anderson, if you wanted to write the check to Chisago County to pay Manager Taves property taxes, they'll take your money, right?
Yes, exactly.
So in the same way, we provide the property identification number, the amount, and we can write one check. The thing that we would probably look at in different from the Wisconsin model is that we would take into consideration or give the option for those that maybe have property or their taxes escrowed.
Mhm.
And then, so we're not kind of throwing things into a loop on that regard. So,
Mhm.
but I've been involved with such a project, and it was much more successful than I could have imagined. But at the same time, given the heightened awareness of property taxes by individuals that write those checks, it's a strong motivator.
Mhm.
So that's what we're trying to lean in on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I look forward to our further discussion on this. It's very exciting.
Any other comments? I just want to make one suggestion. It's a little bit not directly applicable to what we've looked at tonight, but before people understand a need for this, they really have to understand what the value or what the importance of shoreline protection is and how that works. And I can remember about 1.5 years ago, when we started looking at this, we saw somewhere a booklet or something that was out that did a beautiful job outlining why shoreline protection is important and what the value of that is. I don't know whether we still have that brochure or what, but I think we need to have something like that to launch out ahead to get people wondering, well, how do I do this? And yeah, I agree it's important. Now, what do I do next? Kind of situation. And I think the other thing this would do is it also tells people that when they move in, et cetera, that there is some responsibility in maintaining your shoreline. And if they understand that, maybe we can keep people from actually doing the wrong thing from the very beginning, which is worth a lot more than trying to restore projects after it's been, ruined. So I think that thought needs to kind of precede the launch of this thing. Not that we're not going to do it this year, but we got to have a selling mechanism up front to make sure people are aware of why it's important before we start asking them to get involved. So just a thought on that. And if we
Yes,
could find that brochure, I think it almost works by itself. So I don't know whether Jessica has that or not anymore, but it was a very effective document. I remember being very impressed with it. So that's my one comment for now. Anybody else have any thoughts?
I'll just want to quickly, if Jess Hall could, there she is. Just want to remind the board, she's our Green Corps member. And so you'll see her face around both at meetings and around town, knocking on doors as we get into the program area here. So, and so Jess and Aiden and Jessica are all working on these materials
Okay.
that you've indicated or requested. Yeah.
Great. So what's the next steps here? We obviously didn't have a lot of time to provide feedback. Do you want us to provide some written feedback, maybe on the top 3 things we like about it, and maybe 3 suggestions or concerns that we have and that you
Yeah.
guys can digest. I mean, how does the board want to do? We could have a separate workshop on this, but I think maybe just providing some feedback verbally or through written text that would be might be helpful to the team in working on this and moving it further along. Mike, what are your thoughts on this? How do you want to get additional feedback from us?
Well, we were looking to bring back something more of a final product with, along with some of the materials, as Aiden noted, at least getting it out to the board prior to doing a soft launch with some of the Lake Association boards at least. So we can get some, some further feedback on it, but we want to be ready when the snow is gone and people are starting thinking about either hiring contractors or doing something else. So we are trying to move it forward. It would be ideal if the board could provide feedback in the next week here, really. And then as we work on finalizing this, there are some components, and I've mentioned it to staff, but we still have it in this, some of the larger dollar amounts. From my many years of experience with cost share programs, if at 50%, there's a lot more ownership at the property owner level. Once it gets beyond that, then it becomes the government's project, and they have not invested as much into whatever the activity is. So, but we'll take a look at this. The other is of course scale and budgets. So how many would we look to interact with? I mean, if we had a lot of these higher level ones, we would not be able to do many parcels. So then that gets into the ranking mechanism that we would have to really lean on. So are we better off spreading it around and trying to get people maybe using a lower dollar amount, but then giving that annual payment for maintenance for maybe beyond 3 years or something. So they would end up with the same dollar amount, but over a longer period of time. Just some additional thoughts for consideration, but if the board could send feedback, I'd say no later than Wednesday of next week, that would be ideal, as we try to, staff will meet again on Thursday, but we need to really kind of put the final touches of what this first version will look like.
Okay, that sounds good. Is the board comfortable with that? Willing to spend some time doing that?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay.
Mhm.
The other man, but Dave, Chris? I don't know how
Well,
much
I
you
guess
had a
my
chance to-
comment,
Okay,
this is Manager Baki. I guess my comment is the sooner we can get something going, the better. There is some interest on Bone Lake right now, and people are looking for solutions and support. So, rather than going slowly, I would encourage us to go a little faster if we can.
yeah, we can learn on the fly, and that's why, I mean, we can change as we move ahead or two, as we learn more things. So I agree with it. Okay, well, that's good then. Let's do that. No other comments, and we'll move on to the next topic, which is the item E, which has to do with the item I added to the board agenda. Again, what we need to discuss,
You
I'm sorry.
you skipped over F, I think.
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
County tax forfeit properties.
Mr. President and managers, so staff have been involved with this. I think the Conservation Office reached out to Blaine originally, and Emily's been involved with this too. But so the counties, of course, will on occasion have tax forfeit properties. We were notified of these. They're all in this Parsons wetland area. This is north of the center basin of Forest Lake, and an area that where farther to the west, we were donated, Jackie McNamara donated that property to the district a year ago. So over time, these were probably platted many, many decades ago, when there was not wetland regulations but there, in addition to the city of Forest Lake, there is a private entity also that's indicated an interest in acquiring these parcels. So there is a process through Washington County and in discussion with council, we've set forth a resolution here that would at least establish our interest in the property and basically asking, as noted, to withhold the sale of it and to take the next step for either us or the city to become the future owners.
Okay, thank you, Mike. The proposed action here is to, and I'll read the motion, is to move to adopt resolution 230302. So I'll make that motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been seconded. Any discussion or comments?
I think it's a good idea. Whenever we have an opportunity like this to protect some natural areas, we should do that, especially so close to the water. So it's
Right.
a good
I agree.
idea. Mhm.
I think we have more to learn about this, whether it's going to cost us money, et cetera, but we've got time for that in the future.
Mhm.
I think the first step is to do the first step and make sure we're in the race.
Absolutely.
So if any other comments, we can call a vote on this then, if everybody's comfortable with that.
Yep.
Okay, with that, if there's no other discussion, or Doug, did you have something to say? I thought-
Nope, I just was agreeing.
Okay, well then, Bobby, could you do a roll call vote on this, on the motion? Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I think-
Chuck.
I just think we still need a second, unless Manager Anderson intended to second.
I did second.
Did you?
Yes.
All right. My apology then.
No, that's okay. I missed that also. So we got a motion and a second. Bobby, you don't want to do the roll call vote?
Manager Baki,
Aye.
Manager Loth,
Aye.
Manager Taves,
Aye.
Manager Schmaltz,
Aye.
Manager Anderson.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, now to our last item that we've added, item E. Again, I'll just repeat what I said in the beginning of the meeting. We have an opportunity to try to get coverage to the public about topics that will be discussed at the Forest Lake Association meeting having to do with the alum treatment, as well as Steve McComas's report on the status of AIS. And as I mentioned before, we have a speaker from the DNR and be talking about loons, and there's a lot of interest in loons. We haven't had a lot of interested people mention this. So we think that will draw a lot of maybe non-lake members into the meeting, which would expose, would gain greater exposure on some of the concepts that we're working on and this whole idea of water quality. So the reason we're trying to tap into Angie is that she's established a pretty good position on her weekly Forest Lake Times articles. In fact, she's got one in tonight's paper again on wetlands, which is very good article. And I think she's got a following right now. So it's a much more efficient way for us to get our message out, both for the watershed district as well as for the Lake Association attendants, by tapping into that audience that's out there, especially if we can get non-lake members to be interested in the meeting and come and learn more about what some of the issues are on the lake. But we do use part of Angie's time, which is part of our contract with Washington Conservation District. So that is somewhat of a conflict of interest. And so, it's something that we should discuss as a board. How comfortable are we doing this? And would it be then available to other lake associations to use also, perhaps if they wanted to promote their speakers and their topics on the lake? So having said that, that's all I'm going to say right now, unless there's other questions. I'm open to open discussion with the board or comments from any of the board members on how you feel about this.
I have a question for you, Steve.
Yeah, Manager Anderson, go ahead.
Thank you. Have you contacted our local papers to get one of their reporters out to talk with you about an article?
They normally come to the meeting and write an article after the thing,
No,
but
no, I'm
normally
talking
what we, do- we write an
beforehand.
article, and send it in every time.
Yeah.
But what happens is they just take the bare guts of it and just put that meeting details about where it's gonna be and so forth, and that's about it. So we
I'm
don't
talk-
get a lot of exposure on the concepts that are detailed discussed at the meeting.
Yeah,
And so
but
we thought we'd like to try something differently this time, since she has a following and a reading,
Uh-huh.
audience already. It'd be interesting to see if we get a lot of new people at the meeting. That's what we're trying to experiment with.
sure. Well, doing feature articles is something that they do, especially for community groups. We have a living, breathing journalist in our audience tonight, Denise Martin, and I think, she could probably weigh in on the best way to engage the local press to highlight articles like this and stories like this.
Is Denise here, or
I see that she's on mute.
Denise, do you want to make any comments?
She stepped away, I guess.
Okay,
Anyway, as far as using Angie, about 10% of the money that we pay in is for targeted information about the watershed. We asked that question some years ago, 3-4 years ago. And that's what she said is about 10% of what we pay is for our local needs. I think, because the Lake Association typically has a lot of speakers or a lot of the detail is about the watershed projects. I don't have a particular problem with this, but I do think, there are for just ongoing needs, the local papers can be tapped as well.
don't be afraid to speak up, because this happens to be the Lake Association, but it could have been Comfort Lake, or it could have been Bone
Mhm.
Lake, as well. So, and in
Yep.
fact, it might be next time around. So you're not gonna hurt my feelings if you don't think it's a good idea, et cetera. I just want to get a
Mhm.
decision made as president, so we can move on. We have other options we can look at. We just thought that we were trying to leverage something that's been working pretty well for our information about the lake and getting it out to the public. Doug, how
Manager
do you feel
Schmaltz,
about
Manager
that?
Baki.
Yeah, Manager Baki, go ahead.
I'm absolutely, I'm all in favor, and any kind of press that we can get out there, whether it's through our lake associations or other venues, it's absolutely good information that needs to be out there. So I totally support it.
Okay. Doug?
I agree too, yeah. Any voice, any channel we can get leverage on, let's use it.
Well, we can try and see what happens, I guess is what I'm kind of recommending. Not that we're establishing a precedent. We can always change it anytime we want. Chris, you haven't said anything?
I have no problem with it.
Okay, okay. So Mike, it looks like we got some board support to at least try it. I know you had some concerns about it, but are you willing to try it? See what happens?
Yes, I just want to coordinate with staff. They're the ones that work with Angie on our communication outreach for the district. But I just wanted to make sure, because the Lake Association are not directly paying for it. So I just wanted to have a board discussion. I just
Right.
thought that was the best idea or best course of action regarding that request. So
And I agree with you. That's why we brought it up. So, okay. Okay, good. Then we'll move ahead with that then. And see how it turns out and do an evaluation on it. Okay, with that finished, then we'll move into old business, which is the Comfort Lake Association funding request.
Mr. President, managers. So we have both the memo. This has been discussed variety of times at different levels over the last not quite 2 years, but close. And in the February, I think 23rd board meeting, there was quite a bit more detail, and I think I sent that link out as a reminder about the discussion. I can also note that unless Mr. Holdman wants to communicate it directly, but there are really kind of two main components. that he was looking for the board to ask or use to frame the questions. And one is with regard to the contribution on the scope of the watershed management plan. That, did the Lake Association, Comfort Lake Association perform the treatment under reasonably founded understanding that the district would be contributing the $15,000? And secondly, is there support in the watershed management plan as presently written for the expenditure? And the suggestion here is, given the innovative treatment category that the DNR placed the funding under, that this would be considered research.
Mike, do you have a copy of those? Oh, yeah, they're there. Okay, so in case you haven't seen those, it's the number 1 and 2 at the bottom of that page, if you want to reread those quickly. So, I mean, there's a lot of other things we could talk about, but this is the council's suggestion that we focus on these 2 questions to try to move to a decision. And that's one reason why we brought this out separately from the Lake Association grant thing, because the 2 are intertwined and they really should be separated out. So. Okay, with that, we don't have a motion on the floor, so we also have the letter from Jeannie Hansen, the president of the CLA, and I think you've all seen that. So what they're requesting is $15,000. So would someone like to make a motion to pay that request so that we can get a second, and then we can open it up for discussion and comments?
I'll make the motion to, out of the research fund, reimburse the Comfort Lake Association for the Innovation DNR grant portion that was attributed to the district, and that's $15,000.
Is there a second? For the benefit of discussion, I'll second the motion so we get discussion on it. So the motion's been made and seconded, and now we get an open discussion, and then we can take a vote on it. Any comments or questions?
I'll just make this comment just in wrapping this up. But, this was tied in with the start of the discussion on the Lake Association grant program. And as that went on and on, longer than expected, it turned into a discussion about using the research fund. And so I think from my perspective, the place where it kind of maybe fell off the tracks is there was an assumption that there was going to be a transfer from the research fund into this project. And that really didn't happen. And so that's just the perspective that I wanted to make sure everybody's aware of. We've talked about the other issues on it. And it definitely is a research program under the innovation grant from the DNR. And it's a specific grant for lake associations to do innovative treatments on EWM and other invasive species.
The other comment I'll make is that even though maybe the Lake Association didn't send in a formal request, their need for the money and their interest in receiving money from us was pretty clear and obvious, I think, to us over all the discussions we've had. In addition, the year before that happened, we did approve, I think, a $7,000 expenditure for EWM. At the time, I think, when we didn't have that as part of our program. So we did pay that up, or we did offer or commit to pay that. Did we ever spend that money, Manager Anderson? Do you recall?
What do you mean? Did we spend it? Yes, it was given to
spent.
the, yeah, it was spent. Yeah.
It was spent. So that was, a precedent set while we were still really not actively funding EWM. But we did fund that part of it. That I think it was 21, September 21 we paid. So that's something else to consider. And I think had this been done differently, we probably would have moved ahead and supported it. But with the confusion between the Lake Association grant and the concern the board had about Floridine, I think it just dragged out too long. So the other way to look at this is we have now a more formal or better structured EWM program based upon stems, where we're committed now to treat heavy infestations, and that if the Lake Association would like to do additional treatment, including in the riparian areas, they're free to do that, but they pay for it themselves. So if you look at how this total project cost breakout stacks up, it's what, $50,000. The DNR supported it with $25,000. So they felt that there was some interest in learning from this project. And then the CLA paid up almost $11,000, and then we were requested to pay $15,000. So had we done just a heavy density payment, we would have probably spent a smaller percentage. This worked out to be about what, 30% of the cost.
Mhm.
So, which is still way less than you covering the whole cost. So those are just some observations from my perspective. So, any other thoughts? Okay, we'll
I can't connect to the Wi-Fi network. You might want to check the connection settings in the.
okay. So with that, then, if there's no other discussion, let's do a roll call vote. Bobby,
Manager Baki,
Aye.
Manager Loaf,
Abstain.
Manager Taves,
Aye.
Manager Schmaltz,
no.
Manager Anderson.
Aye.
Motion carries. So then we will write a check for the 15,000 requested. Motion carries.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks, Ward. Okay, now moving on. Project update is the next topic I believe we have here. Mike?
Yes, Mr. President and Manager, and Blaine, if you're still here, maybe you want to take this, please?
Sure. So this is kind of just managers, Mr. President. Thank you for a few minutes to chat. This is just our standard project update. I believe you've had a chance to perhaps look through the update. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer any at this time. Or if you'd like, I could go through any of the slides that we have provided.
Are there any questions or comments?
Blaine,
I
I think
thought
you
the
should
slide-
give an update on this Highway 61 project, since it's such a large project and
Yeah,
not
and
all,
since we
not all the
haven't
managers
heard
will
about that one either.
be
So
driving
it would be
by.
good.
Sure. I would be happy to. So our first slide here just is an image of the diversion weir that's being constructed for the project. If we want to go in a little bit further, we can go to the actual, I think it's maybe page 3, slide 3. That'll be the actual project itself. Yep, here we go. So just as a refresher for folks, this is a wetland enhancement project. We're restoring the hydrology of a wetland associated with the ditch flow from the Himes Lake Highway 35 area. So drains from that large wetland area, just adjacent to Himes Lake through a drainage ditch, and then enters into the Sunrise River. That flow will be intercepted by this project and diverted into a series of large wetlands that'll help to settle out any total suspended solids that are in the water and help through biological processes remove phosphorus that's in that water. Our diagnostic monitoring identified this project and identified that there was a high load of phosphorus and other nutrients coming down. So that's why we implemented the project. The benefits are approximately 89 pounds of phosphorus load reduction at the project edge, so into the Sunrise River, and then additional benefits at Comfort Lake, 65-pound reduction at Comfort Lake. The project itself is a large wetland complex, so it's adding wildlife habitat and other ecological processes to the area. The lifetime cost per pound is around $600, $618, or excuse me, $618 per pound of phosphorus reduction. The project began construction late January, and it just wrapped up this past week here. So there's still a few pieces of machinery out there, but they should be removed here in the next few days. And a touch of restoration as far as seeding and additional erosion control fabric being put down. They finished the diversion weir earlier this week, got that in place. So as soon as we have the melt here, we should see that those ponds filling up, and any flows coming out of that ditch should be directed through the wetland complex at that point. There's some additional work that'll be done this spring. There is the connection of the ditch from the other side of the highway. There'll be a pipe directionally drilled underneath the highway that'll connect those flows into a northern wetland pond type habitat that'll help settle out any phosphorus that's coming off of the road right away or the ditch network associated with Highway 61. That'll have additional benefits of reducing heavy metals and things like that that come off roadways. So that'll be another benefit for the Sunrise River and Comfort Lake downstream. Yeah, essentially the project is 95% completed except for that spring work, which will be the additional revegetation, so addition of trees and shrubs, and then that ditch connection from the other side of Highway 61. Any questions or comments on this particular project?
I have one question. Have you calculated a sediment capture from this project? Or
I
reduction?
believe there are some numbers. I'd have to look through the feasibility report to pull those out, but
Mhm.
I believe there is an estimate of total suspended solids that would be removed from the project.
Okay, it's always important, especially in the Comfort Lake watershed district, because we have more sediment loading into Comfort Lake than any of our other lakes. All of our lakes combined, it's more than that. So it's a very important statistic to have on projects in this area. Thank you.
Excellent point. Thank you.
I think Emily has that number perhaps.
Yes, I can give that really quickly, Manager Anderson and managers. So the estimated sediment reduction at the edge of project is 51,740 pounds per year. And by the time it reaches Comfort Lake, it's 18,600 pounds per year.
Thanks, Emily.
And that's pounds, not tons, right?
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Emily.
Any other questions? I thought the other slides were well done. But if we have any questions, go ahead and fire away. Actually, we're doing pretty good on time tonight.
Okay, good. This is something I've noticed as I've driven by that project in the last several weeks. When we have conditions like we've had where, everything melts and it's not all gone, but certainly the soil is a little bit less firm. There's a lot of tracking that happens when the trucks come off site and then travel, especially north on 61. That seems to be their route. And so there's a lot of dirt that comes out on the road, and in the spring that'll all wash into the ditches. So I'm wondering if we can't make some requirement on projects like this where we have some type of, it's a trap for getting some of that soil off of the tires. It's not 100%, of course, but it certainly takes a lot of that soil off the tires before they get on public roads.
We do try to incorporate some of those elements into our designs. We require a rocked entrance onto the property. It's just extremely muddy in that area, and unfortunately the trucks are tracking some of those soils out onto the roadway.
Okay.
We also require the contractor to do sweeps of the roadway to remove that debris as needed. We
Okay.
did ask that the contractor increase their frequency on this particular project because we did notice those soils being brought out from the project.
Perfect, thank you. I didn't know that, so that's good that we incorporate our own street sweeping. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, if not, thank you very much, Blaine. Appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Next topic is summary and approval of board direction. Chuck?
Mr. Chair, managers, just a couple of items that I have. One is that Manager Anderson asked with respect to the 2023 AIS plan that staff clarify statements and figures concerning SecuDisc readings for Little Comfort Lake, Lake Keewatin, mean summer phosphorus concentration trend on Forest Lake, and also asked that the report incorporate the Comfort Lake Association's the spring delineation of Eurasian water milfoil related to last year's treatment. And then Manager Schmaltz asked that there be some type of brochure or literature focused on initially educating folks on the value of protected shoreline in association with the grant program. And staff indicated that they are already working on that. And those are the only items that I have.
Okay,
There
thank you,
was,
Chuck.
there was one more on the AIS report, and that was looking at putting in the beginning number for phosphorus when we started our program. So that would be, 2010, 2012 numbers. So we can see where our beginning point was.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, before we adjourn, I just have a couple other topics I want to bring up. One is that federal government has now eliminated the COVID emergency, so we probably should discuss our next meeting, what our plans are with dealing with COVID in the future, whether we're going to continue Zooming men, come back to meeting or have some other options. So be prepared to talk about that next time at the meeting. The other thing I think it would be helpful for the new managers to do is to have our council do a quick review, high-level review of the governance manual. That will help us better understand what our responsibilities are, what we can and can't do, et cetera, et cetera. I think I still see some hesitancy in our new members, although most of them have been here a year and a half, so we're gonna have to take the word new off pretty soon. But I think it would be helpful if Chuck, if you could maybe plan to do that. Now, whether we want to do that and the third thing we've got to do, we still have to meet with Mike on his SMART goals. So the governance manual and the Mike's SMART goals, we could probably put that together in one special meeting, maybe an hour and a half meeting, and go through those two topics. Would you prefer to do it that way, or would you prefer to take each one and try to tack it onto a meeting as we move forward and just not have any other special meetings? I'll leave it open to comments. I know you prefer probably not to do either, but we really need to get through this.
Manager Smalls, I would prefer not to tag things on to meetings, but
Okay. How does the rest of the board feel? Dave?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with Chris's suggestion. That's fine.
Okay, and Doug?
Yeah, same here.
So then we'll try to set up a special meeting then, or maybe two special meetings of an hour each or something like that. Probably better to have one meeting.
I'm sure you're waiting for my response as well.
Right, Manager Anderson, I know you agree with everything, so go ahead.
Oh, yeah, that's right. No, I think having workshops is more important, or special meetings
Okay,
to delve into topics. It's much better to do that.
let me talk with council and see how much time that's going to take on his part, and then we'll decide whether we have one or two meetings. Fair enough, and I'll get back to you when we try to set those up, just so when we try to set that meeting up, you know what it's all about.
Mhm.
Okay, anything else that anybody wants to bring up before we adjourn? Catch the end of the Hill Murray hockey game. Although I think that was a disaster, but anyway, we'll see. Nothing else? Okay, then I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
I'll make that motion.
Okay. Thought maybe everybody's waiting till for 9 o'clock, but okay. I'll second that motion. Bobby, can you do a roll call? vote?
It is after 9 o'clock here on the East Coast, just.
That's true. That's true. Okay, well, we'll put a star by your name, Dave.
Thank you.
Okay, Bobby? And thanks
Manager
for-
Baki,
Aye.
Manager Lowe,
You're muted.
Manager Lowe,
Aye.
Manager Taves,
Aye.
Manager Schmaltz,
Aye.
Manager Anderson.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Meeting adjourned at 8:20. Thanks all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Dave,
Good
thanks
night.
for